thing. It's gonna follow you. Somebody gave it to me, and I passed it to you. Wherever you are, it's somewhere walking straight for you.
It is bound by physical barriers. Geographically, when you drove away, is that where you last left it? Is there a max distance where it resets and it does teleport? Or is it literally the last place you left it?
I think it's just it's constantly walking. So you could drive across the country and then it has to walk across the country. So you buy yourself a few weeks.
That sucks for that thing. And it's got to hop on a plane, fly coach, or swim across the ocean.
What if it learned to fly coach?
It learned to break windows.
What if it learned to buy a plane ticket?
It doesn't even need to buy it. It would just walk on. It's invisible.
Yeah, but where would it sit?
Stand right at the door.
I feel like you could eventually trap it, even stick it in a hole, a really deep hole. Like if you went out into the ocean and it swam after you and you threw some blood on it and a great white shark came up, like...
That's a great point. Would animals fuck it up? Hey, what's poppin', corn dogs? We are back, baby. Spooky season rolls on. We're still here. We're eating candy corn. We're trick-or-treating because that's what we do. Because I'm Captain Pop. I'm a candy corn kid. I'm a trick-or-treater. I'm eating treats. I'm eating. I'm skeeting. I'm skeet. All rich. All over you fools. I'm in these streets and I can't be trick-or-treating, pulling tricks, eating treats in these streets without my corn dog, candy corn, best buddy pal in a ghost costume. I'm just kidding. He's wearing a Costco sweatshirt. It's my best friend, Nick Justice. He's here. He's my co-host. How the hell are you doing?
Jamesy, I am doing fantastic. And thanks for the over-the-top intro. I appreciate it. It is spooky season, and I am the chief corn dog around here. I'm the guy who puts corn dogs in your kids' trick-or-treat baskets because I'm that weird neighbor like that. And you can't trust me, just like we can't trust anyone in these movies that we're watching this month, James, because it do be spooky season.
Oh my gosh, spooky season. And Nick, aren't we so lucky? Because the month of October in 2024, we get 5 Wednesdays, which means we get 5 episodes of Just Play It. Because we love spooky season. We love being scared. We love scaring fools.
Boo, my friend. Boo.
Boo, bitches. Yep, we're coming at you every freaking week. This is the climax. This is our 3rd out of 5 episodes. Might be our scariest movie. I'm not sure. But it's going to be a good one. It's going to be different. I'm so excited to talk about this movie. Spoilers, I really like this movie. Didn't know what to expect. Never saw it. Was kind of too scared to see it. Happy I saw it. But before we even get into that, Nick, we got to hit our quiz. We got to get warmed up. And we're going to jump into Pop Trivia. Now, if you are new to the channel or you just need a reminder, we do the Cinematrix quiz. It's a daily quiz, actually, that vulture.com offers. We're on a perfect streak here, Nick. I think we're on a 10-week streak.
We're in double digits.
Double digits over here. We're going to try and keep that rolling because the rules of the game are that is the 3x3 grid. Typically, we get 3 actors on one side. We get 3 categories on the other. Got to match them up with correlating movies, and we can't use the same movie twice. We only get 9 guesses, so we got 9 guesses per 9 squares. We're always trying to hit that top percentage of the day. 2 weeks ago, we peaked. We PR'd. We hit the top 1%. That has been the white whale of this goddamn podcast ever since we started quizzing. And we did it.
True.
Right? We did it. It was almost too shocking to celebrate.
I was surprised.
You got to be on it. You got to be quick. You got to be snappy. And you got to know where your opponent's head's at, because we're trying to outguess our opponents, those other fools that are doing this quiz, by guessing rare movies, obscure movies. We know the name of the game. Hopefully you do too. And we're going to get this quiz started. Nick, who do we have for our actors?
For our actors this week, we have Ben Affleck, Bruce Willis, and Liv Tyler.
Okay.
And James, what about those categories? Well, I feel really good. I also love going into a quiz like this because they put people on there for a specific reason. And I can already tell you that the common thread here is Armageddon. from the mid to late 90s. And, they're all actors in that movie. But we're not going to use Armageddon today because that's too damn obvious. But James, tell me the categories that we got to get for these actors.
Categories include release date 1995 to 2004, 4+ words in title, and $100 million worldwide at the box office. Nick, funny thing about Armageddon, that's the movie I thought The Fifth Element was. I got those mixed up, which is why we watched it last year, and I was really disappointed, and I thought that wasn't that good. Sorry, everybody, if you like Fifth Element.
All right, well, James, let's go ahead and get this started. Now, I will say, 2 of the 3 actors, we have watched a movie of theirs that fall into one of these categories. And I have to ask you, it may not be the most rare answer, but are we obligated to guess it?
We are obligated. I would say it's, when people say donations for a free event are highly encouraged, I would say we are highly encouraged to do due diligence for the podcast and include movies that we have watched as an homage to them. I called out one of them already, and the other one's pretty obvious because we watched it this last February-ish.
We did.
So let's start out with Ben Affleck, and let's talk about the movie we're referring to. We watched him as Matt Murdock / Daredevil in 2003's Daredevil. Do you think that 100 million? I mean, we should know.
It did.
Because
it did. It went about 170-ish, 160, 170-ish. For that. So I think that's a sneaky $100 million. I think that's its best place to be guessed at. For release date, I'm going to bring up a movie that you may or may not heard of and may or may not remember. It was supposed to be a lot better than it was. It was a movie called Paycheck. It was Ben Affleck starring. It had, let me see if I remember this. It was a movie I watched with my dad. It had Aaron Eckhart, Uma Thurman, Paul Giamatti, Michael C. Hall. It was supposed to be really good. It was this guy, I think he was an accountant of some sort, and he got involved to try and make a quick $1 million or two, like in the early 2000s when making $1 million was the game
So much money.
And something went wrong, and then he was getting chased, and he was on the run, just like a very typical Affleck movie. But it was called Paycheck.
Was he the accountant?
Well, he was in the movie The Accountant.
That's what I was going to refer to. Is that a sequel I don't know about?
All of a sudden, he got autistic and became a mercenary. I don't know. It could be in the same universe. But I'm going to nominate the movie Paycheck. There's also Geely, which is the notoriously bad.
I think that's going to be too popular.
I do too.
When I saw the release date and I saw Ben Affleck, besides Daredevil, because we watched it, the first thing I thought of was Geely, because it's just notorious.
What do you think about Paycheck?
Let's do Paycheck. I'm totally in on it because you are a goat at this quiz.
3% for Paycheck. I know bad movies, my friend.
3%. I'm going to take that to the bank. Speaking of the bank, let's just hit up 100 million. Let's just hit up 100 million. Let's go Daredevil.
Let's go Daredevil here. I like that a lot.
Curious to see.
5%. I'll tell you what, people don't realize that movie did really well. People think of it as a bad movie. We discussed this. If you haven't listened to it, go back, listen to the Daredevil podcast.
It's great.
It did really well, and it wasn't as bad as people say. So,
yeah, we enjoyed it. Acknowledge its flaws. 4+ words in the title. So obviously you have we have Dawn of Justice, which is what we've
Batman
used.
vs Superman. We have a cameo I'm aware of in Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back.
Let's see. Yeah, I'm trying to dig up obscurities. I can only think of 1 and 2, like Air, The Town, Argo, Geely,
The Accountant.
I'm gonna defer to you because we have Dawn of Justice, which is obvious, Batman versus Superman, but let's try Jay and Silent Bob. 21. Okay.
21%. I thought it'd be a little more obscure, but what you gonna do?
Know that. It's all good. Okay, moving down to Bruce Willis.
I have a sneaky 100 million.
Ooh, what's your sneaky 100 million?
So my sneaky 100 million is an animated movie, and we know how animated movies do. And it was really funny. I was just thinking about this movie the other day, and it's a little movie called Over the Hedge, because I was on one of my playlists came up Ben Folds' Rockin' the Suburbs, which is the title track to that movie. So I was listening to it, and I thought, oh, this was from that movie Over the Hedge. And he is RJ, I believe the raccoon, in that movie. He's the lead voice in that.
Let's Fifth Element it for release date, and then we'll follow it up with Over the Hedge for the box office.
Perfect. Fifth Element, only 11%.
I think everyone's thinking Die Hard.
Caught a lot of this,
Everyone's thinking Die Hard, which could be a 4+ words if we wanted to.
So do we Over the Hedge?
We Over the Hedge.
2% on Over the Hedge, my guy.
That's why we do animated, boys. You know what? You can also start typing in Bruce Willis, because if you recall from 2 weeks ago when we had Martin Lawrence, the most rare answer was a stand-up special, which had his name in it. I mean, I'm not saying Bruce Willis can have a stand-up stuff, but, I think that's a strategy that we could do as well.
Let's remember that for the next comedian we have.
I like it. 4+ words. So you got Live Free or Die Hard. Obvi.
There was also a movie where he was a mercenary called Tears of the Sun. That's a Jerry Justice special.
I thought of a good release date one, but we still had to do it because we watched The Fifth Element. But do you remember the movie with Spencer Breslin and Bruce Willis called The Kid? It was a Disney movie.
Where he was a pilot.
That was like his younger self, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's just funny because he's in another movie with Joseph Gordon-Levitt called Looper, which he plays the older version of Joseph Gordon-Levitt.
What happened to Joseph Gordon-Levitt?
He's around.
Okay.
I got Live Free or Die Hard. Yeah, Die Hard with a Vengeance, I think, might be a little bit too obvious. We could do Tears of the Sun.
Let's see what we get for Tears of the Sun.
Oh, 2%. Since we're on YouTube, and you should definitely watch this on YouTube if you're listening to our audio podcast, but Nick, can you show me Liv Tyler?
If you're not as familiar with Liv Tyler, I will tell you she was the love interest. I forget her name.
Was she in Hulk?
But in Edward Norton's Hulk, yes. She was also in the movie, the horror movie, The Strangers, since it's spooky season. We'll call it a horror movie.
Never saw that, but I know you did.
Armageddon, obviously, like stated before. But really the answer I'd go with for all three of these, and it's just the matter of order we go in, is she was Arwen in all three of the original Lord of the Rings movies.
That's right. Yeah, I don't really have much. So, Nick, why don't you just rattle it off? Just list it to the audience, what you're picking for what, and let's finish this puppy out. Stay perfect.
All three of the Lord of the Rings work for all three of these. They're all 100+ million box office worldwide. The release dates were 2001, 2002, 2003, and they all have 4+ words in the title.
Let's lauder sweep it.
You want to go 3, 2, 1?
Let's do 3, 2, 1.
Return of the King. 4%.
4+ words in the title. We're going to go with Two Towers.
Two Towers. Let's do it. Oh, 24%. But that's fine.
That's all right.
We had 24% last week in our 2%er. So I feel okay about this. And let's just sweep it out with Lord of the Rings Fellowship.
Round it out. Fellowship of the Ring is 20%.
20%. But that puts us at top 6% of players today.
Top 6. Hey, I'll take it. We're coming off a high of a 1%, a 2%. If 6 is underwhelming for us these days, I think we're doing something super right.
I agree with you.
Let's read the most popular correct answers. We're going to start out with Ben Affleck, and release date. Most popular is going to be Good Will Hunting. 4+ words in the title is going to be Batman v Superman, Dawn of Justice. And $100 million at the box office is going to be Gone Girl.
For Bruce Willis, release date is going to be The Sixth Sense. For 4+ words in the title, we have Die Hard with a Vengeance. And $100+ million, we have the original Die Hard.
And most popular for Liv Tyler, Release date, we have Empire Records. 4 plus words in the title. We do have The Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring. And $100 million at the box office, we have Return of the King. So we made a good choice there.
All right, let's get ourselves to our most rare answers because we love these. For Ben Affleck, release date, we have the animated Joseph, King of Dreams. And I feel like we probably watched this
I was going to
in
say.
grade school.
Yeah.
I have no idea that Ben Affleck was involved.
Early 2000s was the era of animated religious stories.
Yeah.
What happened to those? Bring them back.
Prince of Egypt, some banger songs.
That's the one I was thinking of.
Deliver us. Yeah, it's a good one. And for Ben Affleck's 4 plus words in the title, we have The Last Thing He Wanted. And $100+ million, we have Paycheck.
Oh, you called that.
I didn't know $100+ million, but hey, we take it.
It even has puzzle pieces, just like The Accountant, because autism, like the puzzle piece is the logo for autism awareness.
I think
they're connected. They're connected.
I think they live in the same universe.
100%. Okay, let's move down to Bruce Willis. Rarest answer for release date is going to be Charlie's Angels Full Throttle. 4 plus words in the title is going to be A Day to Die. And $100 million at the box office is going to be Charlie's Angels Full Throttle. Yet again.
Was A Day to Die part of the Die Hard series? Or is that just a separate Die movie?
I mean, when you have Bruce Willis on the poster and Die in the title, kind of hard to unsee it.
Right. And Liv Tyler, release date, we have Onegin, Onegin. I don't know. For 4 plus words in the title, we have Jamie Marks is Dead. And for $100+ million, we have Ad Astra. That movie just sounds familiar, but I totally forgot that it was a thing.
I remember hearing it, but you know what? I don't care about it because we're perfect. 11 quizzes in a row. Perfect. Not missing a thing. I haven't used the wrong answer sound clip in months.
Just get rid of it. Throw it away.
Delete it. Delete it from the media. Don't need it. What we do need is to talk about the movie we watched this week, which was It Follows from 2014. This movie is directed and written by David Robert Mitchell, and we came to learn that this was an indie movie, independent. So we're going to have low-budget charm and some no-name actors, or little known-name actors, I should say. Nick, who is in this movie? Who stars?
So our stars of this movie, and apologies if I butcher a name, Maika Monroe? Maika?
I was just going to say Micah.
Yeah, Maika Monroe, who I did recognize, not because I've seen the movie, but I saw the trailer for it everywhere over this last 6 months. She was the star of that movie, Long Legs, with Nicolas Cage. We have Keir Gilchrist and Olivia Liccardi.
I'll just shout out the other not kid actors, but they play teens or young adults. We also have Lily Sepe and Daniel Zavato. That's kind of
Any
our main
top
squad
tier
of
recognition for you, because I didn't.
Oh, I mean, not even that top tier, but Keir Gilchrist, I only recognized him from the show Atypical. Speaking of autism, which was shooting.
Autism's just a theme of the show.
It's the theme of this episode, apparently. He was on that show Atypical, and I remember they were shooting on the Fox lot when I was there working on a couple shows. I'd see the posters everywhere. And that's the only thing I recognized anybody from, actually. So, yeah, a lot of fresh faces. And, Nick, what do we have for our dollar signs? What's going on with this one?
Yeah, a little conflicting info on the estimated budget, but it was anywhere between $1 and $1.3 million. So in that low $1 million range. But we did worldwide box office at $21 million, 21.6 to be exact. So a great return, 20x return-ish.
I don't know how these things get made. I don't know how you fund the money, but David Robert Mitchell got his money and did the best he could, and I think he really capitalized on it because this has kind of become a cult, not classic, but it has a cult following to it. Got widespread recognition. I remember this movie getting name dropped when I was in the theater watching Jurassic World. Someone said, "Oh, have you guys heard of It Follows? It's so good." Because I think this came out in Cannes in 2014 and maybe got a wider release in 2015, or maybe it was streaming by then on Netflix. I'm not quite sure, but I do remember it getting name dropped, and I checked it out one time, the trailer 10 years ago, and thought, this looks scary. No thanks. Nick, speaking of, were you scared to watch this? Do you scare easily? I know you say you're not a horror movie guy, and I just want to throw something out there about myself. Growing up, I was not a horror movie person myself because as a kid, I was scared. I didn't want to be scared. But I think I am a horror movie guy now because I don't want to watch it, but I want to watch it. I want to see what's going on.
Yeah, the reason I'm not a scary movie guy usually is I think a lot of them are, sorry for horror movie aficionados and for the good directors in the horror genre, but I think a lot of them are poorly made, poorly acted, poorly thought out. I do hate bad premises, and I think a lot of horror movies, a lot of things happen just for the plot to continue, at least in my experience.
Are you too logistical? Are you too
Absolutely.
cynical where you think, because like we said, The Strangers, I remember you crap talking that movie because you said, bro's got a shotgun in close quarters and just not purposely, but muffs 3 shots on this guy coming at him. So are you not a fan of the tropes? Do you not get scared easily? Are you trying to be a big tough guy over there and say you don't get scared, or do you actually get scared during these things?
All the above. I will get scared. I mean, I'm human. A jump scare can get me.
I'm not saying do you get a physical reaction or anything, but like, does your heart rate go up? Would I catch you doing this? Like the movie's captured you and you're unaware of how you look and you're enthralled.
I'm trying to think. Not really. I think a lot of it's pretty. Once I know what's going to happen, it stops being scary. And I think most of horror movies are fairly predictable in a sense. I'm trying to think. There are some examples of movies, horror thriller movies, that have definitely got me a little bit. So I'm not immune to it, but I'm too logistical. I'm too practical that a lot of these movies, the weight of it doesn't hit me. And so when I know, it sounds really bad, but a lot of times I end up at halfway through the movie thinking these victims kind of deserve it. And at that point, it sort of loses a lot of its purpose.
So let's say horror movies, for the most part, were not falling to those tropes or were not being stereotypical cookie cutter stuff. Would you be a little bit more of a fan, or are you just not that into it?
Yeah, no, I like getting my heart rate up. I like the adrenaline rush. There was a movie, The Woman in Black, with trying to remember
I heard
the
that
actors.
Was scary.
Yeah, it was really
Daniel
good.
Radcliffe.
Daniel Radcliffe, yes, thank you. Yeah, that one was really good. Did not rely on tropes. It was just plot-wise, it was a guy who was trying to settle the estate of this old woman at this creepy house and ended up, he was trying to do his job so he didn't get fired. I can resonate with that. We're all trying to do our job just so we're not getting fired, and ends up getting haunted in the meantime. And that was really good. And it did get my heart rate up. So I just want a scary movie to take the same care of the story that we do get with a lot of these movies that we rank highly. And spoiler alert, this movie does a good job, actually, with that.
I think cheap tricks are going to be big negative points for people, especially for you over there, from what I'm hearing. And I'm just going to echo a movie we watched last spooky season, Maximum Overdrive, which we shouted out last week. I think it relied on all of the wrong things and executed nothing positive. They were going for shock value and gore, and gore stuff can be, I'm in the same boat. I don't necessarily need to see that every 5 minutes. This movie has a fat ass gore scene right in the beginning. So we kind of established a threat, which I think is important. But yeah, I think the cheap tricks are going to turn people off. The predictability is going to turn people off. So you need to have a unique voice behind the camera in the director's chair, convincing acting, and not stupid decisions and outrageous scenarios where you're thinking, I'm out of it because who would run into this dark house by themselves and corner themselves?
I feel like I'm sort of Randy from Scream sometimes, sitting there watching a movie going, oh, yeah, they're going to die. Oh, yep, they made that. Never make that decision.
Don't go in there.
Yeah, it's that old, almost a meme. Oh, we're moving in from the city out to the country. We're buying this house that old man Jenkins, his family was murdered in. This is a great place to raise my children. And my kids hearing voices. This is fine. Like,
what are we doing?
At that point in the movie, I'm already out. Right.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. Now, bringing it back to this movie, did you know anything about this movie? And before you watched it, did you watch a trailer? Did you read a log line? Did you get any hints of what you're getting into?
Read a log line because it was on when I was clicking through the movies to rent via Amazon. It tells you the log line. So I read it, but did not watch a trailer, anything like that. I went in completely blind to this one.
Were you anxious or were you just like, let's party?
We'll get into this log line here in a second, but I thought it was going to be, I was ready to rag on this movie a lot just because of the way the log line lays out the premise. And I thought, here we go. We're getting some weird premise into this movie and it's going to be tropey and dumb. So that was the headspace I was going into this movie.
Interesting that the log line, which is supposed to hook you, kind of makes you do a step back and you're thinking, I'm a prejudge this already off the bat.
Yeah. What about you? Did you have any exposure to this movie before?
Like I said, name dropped, watched the trailer probably 10 years ago and thought that looks scary and creepy and freaky. I don't want to watch it. And then when I was making a list of the movies to watch this year, I wanted to bring a modern horror movie in because we watch a lot of 80s horror movies because I think that's just a golden era of cheese and scares and iconic movies. But I thought we got to bring something modern in. So I just randomly remembered It Follows. And then I threw in Jordan Peele's Nope just because I haven't seen it, which I feel like I've heard mixed reviews about. And you had the great idea of doing a coin flip. So when we did the coin flip and it landed on It Follows, I thought, oh shit, here we go. Time to face my fears. My wife was freaking out the entire time. And she was just in the living room with me doing homework. And I started the movie and I told her that it was going to be probably actually scary, not one of our goofy, campy horror movies that we've watched in the past. And she was trying not to watch, but she kept looking up and watching because she just wanted to know what was going to happen. And she was pretty enthralled staring at her computer. So she was hating it and she was hating me the whole time. And she was that guy in the audience asking questions or saying, why'd you crash the car? Oh, classic. Now we got to be stuck in a corner. So I was like, are you watching this or are you not? Because you said you have homework to do, but she was captivated. So yeah, I was excited to watch it. I'm happy I watched it. Now let's get into it. I'm going to read this log line for us, and then I would love for you to queue up that trailer. We can watch it. We can react to it. If you're watching us on YouTube, you can see the highlights of our reaction. And here we go. A young woman is followed by an unknown supernatural force after a sexual encounter.
That's the part of the log line that got me. It's like after the sexual encounter. I'm like, okay, what do we got here, guy?
What themes are we going to get into? All right, let's check out this trailer.
I used to daydream about being old enough to go on dates.
Already dig the music.
I had this image of myself holding hands with a really
Very
cute
Stranger
guy.
Things before Stranger Things even came out.
On some pretty road.
Yep.
It's never about going anywhere, really. It's having some sort of freedom, I guess.
We're getting some teen drama.
Oh, guys.
You awake? You're not gonna believe me, and I need you to remember what I'm saying.
This thing,
Okay.
it's gonna follow you. Somebody gave it to me, and I passed it to you.
Wherever you are, it's somewhere walking straight for you. All you can do is pass it along to someone else.
I'm scared.
What does that font look like? Is it Friday the 13th? Is it Evil Dead? Is it?
No, it's me.
I remember this.
Everything's okay.
I remember this. Yeah. big, tall, creepy man walking in.
Like someone you know?
Yep.
Or it could be a stranger in a crowd. Whatever helps it get close to you.
Oh, The Thing. That's what it looks like. The font looks like the opening titles from The Thing. The shining
the music,
through. Yes.
the font, it's all very John Carpenter-ish.
Yes, right. Yeah. That's the thing.
Yep.
That's the thing. That's the thing. I'm going to put that
It is
up
the
so
thing
people
thing.
can see what I'm talking about. And this movie's very similar to The Thing. Similar concept. There's going to be a lot of similarities to it. And we're going to talk about it right now because we are entering Plot Talk. Spooky time. Okay, so Nick, you did a really good job of compiling this doc because usually we go through the plot bullet point by bullet point. We're hitting major beats. Loving this episode because you had a great layout here, a great roadmap that you're just going to explain the rules of the game because all horror movies have rules because we're dealing with supernatural forces sometimes.
You hope they do.
You hope they do, and I hope they stick with the rules. So you're going to explain the rules, and we're going to unpack what happened in this movie, what we theorized after it, because this is one of those movies where it was a thinker after I watched it. I watched it a second time, got to pay attention to this stuff, knowing what I know now. So yeah, let's start out with the rules. What are the rules of this movie?
All right, James. So the rules of this movie is we have a curse. So we start out with this curse, and this curse is that you are followed by an entity. I think we're going to refer to it a lot this episode as a demon. I think there's arguments that it is some sort of demon. And only
Monster,
the people
it.
affected by the curse can see this demon. And it could take the form of anyone. So it could be your parents, it could be your brother, it could be your friends, it could be some random person on the street, and you never know. You just know you're being followed. The way this demon starts to follow you is you have to have sex with somebody who's also being followed by this demon. So it's a bit of an STD. So once you have sex with somebody, they now catch this curse.
And this is people call this the STD horror movie.
They do. And I can see why. It moves at a walking pace, but it always knows where you are. So it can't run at you. It can't break the laws of physics. It is constantly walking at you. It can't get close to you and then lunge. It just walks. If it catches you, it will kill you. Although we find out in this movie, you can break out of its grasps. But if it does get its hands on you, it's going to kill you. And then it follows the person that was cursed before you. So it only follows one person at a time. And then if it kills you, it'll go to the person that passed it to you. So you may pass it on to another person via having sex with them. So it's this long chain. And the point of this demon is to kill everyone in this chain, starting with the most recent person affected by this curse. So that's the rules of our demon.
Easy. And you know what? I appreciate we don't like expository scenes, but we have this character named Hugh/Jeff. Goes by Hugh. I think his name is actually Jeff. He has a fake name to just hide his identity because of this thing he needs to get rid of. But it's almost too much exposition in the scene where he explains the name of the game, but that's what we need. We need to know what we're up against. And it's a period at the end of his spiel, and we just know the rules. And we're not asking why, we're not asking how, we're not asking when did this get started. We just know what's at stake. And I appreciate that this movie establishes those rules efficiently, quickly, and we understand the monster's capabilities in the beginning and as we go along, because I was worried this was going to be a spirit and it was going to teleport and we were going to get 100 jump scares. And I thought, that would piss me off because I hate unfair scares. # no unfair scares. I want to know where this thing's at.
I agree. And we do love saying on this podcast, show, don't tell. But it's really hard to show all of the properties of an entity that doesn't really have a personality. So this is an example of the filmmaker saying, hey, in this case, we do have to lay it out for you. They do a really good job of waiting till about 45 minutes into the movie to really give you the full spiel of exactly what you're dealing with. So you do get about 30, 45 minutes of questioning and wondering what the hell's going on here.
Yeah, they had to split it up, and I think that was smart. And I like that this whole phenomenon of this movie, this monster, it totally plays into one of the movie rules that Randy, as you mentioned before from Scream, brings up. It's totally leaning on that trope of if you have sex in a horror movie, then you're dead. It's drinking, it's having sex, it's basically being a bad person. And it's going to be one of the few classic tropes that our boy David Robert Mitchell is going to lean into. Let's unpack this movie, and I want to start out by talking about what happened. So there's a lot of things in this movie that are left up to question based on the limited information we get. So let's start out from the beginning. So in the beginning, there's a girl. She's running out of the house. She's in high heels. And this is self-proclaimed by the director that this is a horror movie cliche. And he is totally leaning into it. You have the damsel in distress, the women in distress. She is in sexualized clothing, is hysterical, delirious, and is freaking out, running away from something. She's scared of something. We're thinking, is she being haunted by a spirit? Ends up hopping in the car, drives to the beach, is on the phone with her dad and says, I just want to let you know I love you. And then we get that smash cut to the insanely gory shot of her leg just full on compound fracture.
Mangled body.
Snapped the wrong way. We follow the classic opening of a girl in distress from a horror movie. We're in the sleepy suburb. So I've never seen Halloween. I've never seen A Nightmare on Elm Street. I'm sorry, you can come after me later. But it reminded me of those movies because of those wide shots and those the setting we're in and the situation we're unfolding. But since we know what we know now, it makes sense because it seems like she's running from nothing. But now after you see the movie, you understand they can see it because she's part of this chain of people that has sex. So on the beach, they give us a wide shot where we can see the car. And I was using that as like I need to scan the horizon and see if I could see whatever she's running from coming. It makes you think, one, is she scared and is it not actually there yet because she drove away? Or two, in that wide shot, do you think the monster is actually there? We can't see it yet because we don't know the rules of the game. And she just sees it coming and she accepts the inevitable and just says, I need to end it here because this is not even worth it.
I don't know why I do that. Just know that I love you, okay?
Do you think in that wide shot it was actually there approaching her? Or do you think she was just scared and did the classic fell asleep on the beach and then woke up dead?
I think the former of what you said. I think it was there in the shot, and we as the audience, right, we end up following Jay, and we don't get exposure to it until we get into that sex scene with Jay, and now we as the audience have experienced that with her, and now we are allowed to see the monster as well. I think it was intentionally done by the director, and I think it was really well done by the director. And you brought up Scream before with Randy. I'll bring it up again. This was very reminiscent to the Drew Barrymore opening scene in Scream, where we don't know anything about this monster, antagonist, force, entity yet. And we're just getting thrown into the deep end of it. And then we cut to our main characters, but that's always in the back of our mind of like, what the hell just happened to start this movie? That was crazy.
Here's a question. Do we think this girl was way before Hugh and it was a flashback just to see what we're up against? Or do you think Hugh had sex with this girl, he passed it on to her, and now it's working its way back? I'm inclined to believe it's the latter. I think Hugh, as we'll see later, he goes on a date with Jay, and he's a little bit at ease and he's comfortable. So he seemed taken by surprise when he saw it, because he looks at the monster because they're playing this game of who would you trade places with, and we get a nice little horror movie reveal. How about that girl in the yellow dress?
What about the girl in the yellow dress?
I don't see her.
Right there.
And then he realizes that, oh shit, I'm in danger. So I feel like Hugh / Jeff passed it on to that girl in the beginning And then she followed the rules of the game and passed it on. And then I think the rules of the game got not explained somewhere down the line. And then the monster started working its way back and eventually caught up to that girl and then got back to Hugh. And then in that theater scene, he realized, oh shit, the girl I banged is dead and I'm next. Do you think it was way before Hugh, or do you think it was in the pecking order?
I think it was in the pecking order.
In the rules, he says it looks like it could look like a rando stranger, or it can look like someone you know and love. So Hugh Jeff, I'll call him that. He explains that it can look like anyone just to get close to you. Mm-hmm. So do you think the entity is picking what it looks like, or do you think it's up to the viewer of what they're seeing?
I think the entity is picking what it looks like. I think the entity has, in the trailer, it says it doesn't think, it just follows. But I disagree with that. The demon, the entity, it seems like a bit of a pretty malevolent personality as far as how it messes with people. There was a few times with Jay where it's up on the roof staring her down, almost a playful demon that is trying to get inside her head. Like it enjoys the hunt a little bit. So I think that the demon does this. We see the demon show up as Jay's father at the end, as family members. I think the demon does this purposefully and is in fact just a messed up curse thing. I don't know.
I'm going to agree and disagree with you. So The Thing, John Carpenter's The Thing is picking what it looks like. And that's very objective, and we know that it body snatch fools and it's a duplicate and it's a phony. And what's even scarier in The Thing is that it talks and acts like a regular person, whereas in this movie, it's pretty monotone in its body language and what it does. It does not talk. It literally just walks straight at you and is going to murder you or have sex with you. So I'm going to agree that
the ultimate gamble,
but I still think the victim is seeing what is in the victim's mind, because I'll go back to Hugh Jeff in the theater. When he sees a girl in a yellow dress, he thinks it's a normal person because he's not suspecting danger. So that's why I think he passed it on a long ass time ago and now it made its way back. And he has that, oh shit moment. Like, this thing is back and now I'm in danger. So I think when he had a comfort level where he wasn't expecting to see a fucked up person, because spoilers, Jay, every time she sees it's usually naked. It's creepy. It's in a nightgown. It has a tit out, a boob out, a dick out. It's very obvious that it's not a regular person. So I think it's like the trauma that she is feeling in her days of being the target, where when it shows up, her fear is at a level 100. So I'm inclined to think it's a little bit of the viewer and what they see, but if you have any last rebuttals to that, let me know.
It's interesting. I guess the way I'd agree with you is when Jay sees the thing breaking into Greg's house, she sees it, I think, as Greg.
Yeah.
And then when Greg sees it, it's his mom.
But she can also see it as his mom, unless we're
down
just
the hallway.
In Greg's POV.
So that's a great. And then how does it just change at will? Does it have to, like the thing, snatch an identity or a body? I think it would make a lot more sense if it was what the person being chased views. I think that actually makes. I didn't think about it that way, but I think that actually makes the most sense.
Speaking of Greg, I want to talk about Greg. So Greg is a fifth wheel in the group. He's a neighbor. He kind of has a thing for Jay. It's pretty clear in the movie that he does not believe whatever Jay is going through. Her immediate crew does, just because they're faithful friends. And then during that beach scene, it's pretty obvious that something is there and something's not right. Greg was taking a piss in the Detroit Everglades, the cornfield or whatever. So he doesn't know. He hasn't seen anything. He's like, I got to see it and then I'll believe it. So Greg has sex with Jay, and I felt like Jay thought it was that he was doing her a favor because he wasn't scared. And I think Greg, he's a little bit of a horn dog. He eyes all of the female characters equally. He's ready to bang.
Opportunist.
He's an opportunist. So this is after the beach scene when they get attacked and she's in the hospital bed. Greg is he's pumping. He's into it. He's like, hell yeah, I'm banging hot ass Jay. Let's go. And Jay is staring at the door worried. So it's like a business transaction for Jay. And Greg's like, I'm about to get laid. So later on, when they say, have you seen anything? Greg says, I haven't seen anything. And it's been 3 days, which is weird because as soon as Jay banged Hugh Jeff, the Thing shows up the same night. Maybe they went to a far ass hospital. So geographically, it was far away. Banged him. And then the next thing we see is Greg chatting it up with a lady at a lunch table. I think Greg passed it on. He's a playboy. He wasn't a believer in the game, so he never explained the rules. And he hangs out with floozies and whatnot. So maybe banged the girl banged someone else. And we never run into the phenomenon of the newsreel. We never run into, well, a teenager was found dead in the ravine today, blah, blah, blah. So we never have confirmation that things got passed along. So I don't think it ended with Greg. I think he banged some poor chick and they're super dead.
It's a death sentence. Yeah. If you have the curse and you bang somebody, you're just giving them a death sentence.
Because 3 days and you see nothing, I thought, I think he passed it on because he wasn't a believer.
Yeah, that thing walks at probably, looks like 3 miles an hour. So what is that, 24 hours in a day? It's constantly walking. It's walking 72 miles
All it does
day.
is walk.
So 3 days, you're talking 126 miles. So they would have had to travel about 126 miles for him not to see it for 3 days.
That beach house they went to, who knows how far away that was.
Yeah.
So yeah. And then lastly, I want to know what happened with the boat guys, because it's insinuated that Jay swam out to a boat where there was 3 guys and possibly had sex with them as a business transaction. So do you think she actually did that? She is crying on the way home right after that cut. So it is suggested that she did the deed. And if she did, is it messed up that she doomed some random guy? And it kind of makes me think a little bit more of Jeff because he had the decency to at least give her the rundown. And in the beginning, the cops made it clear that it was consensual. Or do you think she didn't even do it?
I think she did do it.
How awkward.
Yeah, very awkward.
Do you think she explained the rules? Or was she just so shooken up and said, oh no.
I think she was shook. I think a lot of this movie is, what would you do if in a paranoid situation like this, if death was creeping around the corner and you were backed into a corner, what would you do? How would you respond? And we see how Jeff would react. He forcefully, but in a weird way, caringly saves his own ass. And then now we have Jay, who with this scene, we're
survivalist,
led to believe that she did what she had to do to pass it on. But even then, she wouldn't pass it on to Paul because she cared about him. So she does have. So it's this weird subplot of what do you do in this situation?
I think it's fight or flight.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot of things that leave the viewer with what happened next. I want to know what happened. So I think we covered the questions I had. But what do you have for this movie?
Yeah, I want to discuss a little bit the physical properties of the demon. I want to talk about its origin. It follows the rules of our physical world. It can't break. It has to open doors or break through them, break through windows. So how powerful is this demon that it has to abide by the rules of this world? Where did it come from? Where did it go, Cotton Eye Joe? I have questions.
I have questions too, and I think that's a very fair thing to experience. But I just want to say I appreciate that we keep it surface level and we keep it simple and we do not get bogged down and pigeonholed into over-explaining its origins and the rules because it's already outrageous. The more you try to justify it, the worse you're going to dig a hole. So I think
this is just
smart.
Theory crafting time. This is just us.
This is theory crafting time for us because we want to know. I think it's fair for us to know. And you can say it's cheating that they don't explain it, but I think it's necessary, especially in horror movies, that we have a premise, we have our rules set, and now we just got to react and we got to go through the motions, not question it. But if we did question it, because we are a podcast, I would like to ask you, what do you think the origin is? I'm just going to spitball here. let's go back to the biblical days. This could be straight up related to the devil, and it could be premarital sex. It could now. Are there a bunch of its around? Are there a bunch of demons, or is there just one? Because it could be breaking the premarital rule. Take Christianity, for example, that you're supposed to get married and then you can lose your virginity. Is it related to that? We don't. So again, speculation. Director left everything vague for a reason. He said, I don't want to get into it. Is what it is. But theorizing, if we were to explain it, is it demons? Is it spirits? Is it just a supernatural monster?
I think it's probably a gypsy curse, if I had to say anything. I'm guessing there was a gypsy somewhere, just like in Leonard Part 6.
Angel Heart? Oh.
Or Angel Heart, sure. There was some kind of curse put on somebody, maybe somebody who was sleeping around too much, a prostitute, maybe it could have gone back to that. And then, a curse of some sort, like you said, where not taking sex seriously. And the consequence of that is that this demon will now follow you and follow anyone else that you seduce or have sex with.
So it makes me think if it started in the BC era and people were just banging everybody, it had a long ass laundry list of people to kill, and it can only go at walking pace. So that's a lot of errands to run while walking.
Yeah, and it must have been invented before airplanes and cars, because you would at least let a curse run if you knew that there were cars and airplanes.
Like, oh, come on, now they're flying?
Back when it was just horses, you go walk after somebody. Someone's just traveling 20 miles from village to village. Now people are jet setting, and you got it. Well, that's another question.
I think this is unfair.
Swim? Does this thing go across oceans? Does it have to go up to the Bering Strait during the winter time and cross continents that way?
Let's talk about the physicality of it. It is bound by physical barriers because, like I said, I'm happy that it couldn't just teleport and be like, it's me. Geographically, when you drove away, is that where you last left it? Or is there some sort of render max distance that let's say if you do drive 3 states over, is there a max distance where it resets and it does teleport? Or is it literally the last place you left it? Which would be crazy because you can hop on a plane.
I think it's just it's constantly walking. It's constantly walking. So you could drive across the country and then it has to walk across the country. So you buy yourself a few weeks.
That sucks for that thing. But yeah, I would just keep on the move.
I feel like you could do some math eventually and find out where it is almost.
I think we'll get into it because we have a question of how would we react to this? What would we do in this situation? But as far as its physical capabilities, it does need to break windows to get in. It does jiggle door handles. Sometimes it waits for the person to open the door. So it seems like it appears to be very strong. And also appears to be interactable with people that are not affected by it, because the scene on the beach, which I think is probably one of the more standout scenes, we see one of the homegirls walk up behind, and I don't know if this is supposed to be a trick on the audience, but I was not fooled at all as soon as I saw someone walking up in the background and Jay was facing the wrong way, who would be the only person who could see this thing. I thought, there's the thing. I didn't know if Mr. David Robert Mitchell was trying to pull a gotcha, because
sneaky on you.
The thing looks like Yara, and then we see someone in a inner tube, an inflatable tube in the water, and I didn't know if the audience was supposed to be, oh my god, Yara's out in the water, because I just counted the amount of people there and I thought, too many people. It grabs Jay's hair, so her hair goes up, and her sister Kelly can see it. It does have physical impressions on the world, because Paul takes a chair to it and it smacks something, and you can see the sand kick off the chair, and then it freaking pimp smacks Paul in the next week. Bro went flying 50 feet. That was very interesting to me, because I thought it was going to be, I'm isolated and it's just me versus the thing, but other people can have effects on it.
So if you threw a gallon of paint on it, would it be visible to everyone else?
According to the rules of the movie, yes, because they throw a blanket on it and it affects it, which got me thinking.
Yeah, it's true.
When you said, can you do the math? I thought GPS tracker. If you can put something on it, slap a tracker, then it'd just be a tracker floating in the air and people would look at it as it walks by, like, what the hell, a floating tracker. I put a sign on it. I put a, not a, like the kick me signs. I put a sign on, I tack a sign on it and say, I'm a ghost. Shoot me. Cage me. Cage me.
Could you not trap it?
Put it in jail.
Yeah, if you put it into jail or behind steel bars or into a steel box and buried the steel box, if it has the physical limitations of a person that it can't even it can't even break its own window, it has to throw a rock through it. I feel like you could eventually trap it, even stick it in a hole, a really deep hole.
That would go back to the resetting. If it just stays where you last left it, or if it does kind of cheat code its way closer to you and it does respawn, it does re-render its location based on if it doesn't think it's fair, like being jailed.
Like if you went out into the ocean and it swam after you and you threw some blood on it and a great white shark came up, like
that's a great point. What would animals fuck it up?
Like if you tossed a piece of meat on its head, would a bear come up and just wreck this demon?
Going back to the quote unquote final battle scene when they're at the pool, Paul headshots it underwater and there's visible cloud of blood under the water, for at least for Jay. So I think it does react to physical harm, but obviously it can get back up from getting shot in the neck like we saw at the beach scene. But when it gets shot in the head, I'm thinking, is it like regenerative? And it does experience a headshot, but is it like Deadpool where as long as there's a single cell alive, it just grows back and then just resets?
So those are all the things I think about when I think of a movie like this.
Because you're logistic. You're logistical.
All I think about is, all right, how would I beat this demon or outsmart this demon? You know, does it feel, if I was up in Antarctica and it was out there in a blizzard.
Oh, speaking of the thing.
Would it freeze?
Like an ice block jail, prison cell?
That's what I'm saying. Like, say it was following you and you lured it down into a pit and then you filled that pit in with concrete. I know we're getting extreme here, guys. But would that demon be able to break out of concrete and continue its chase?
It might, because it does show super strength from the pimp smack.
It does have quite a pimp smack.
It does have survival instincts because during the pool scene, it elects not to get in the water first thing. It does try to, because they set up electronics. They had the trap idea. So they said, let's trap it in the water and then throw toasters and lamps and stuff to try and electrocute it. It doesn't get in the water. It actually starts throwing the electronics at Jay. And I got to say, this thing has aimbot because it was hucking electronics right at her face.
Yay!
Accuracy was at 100.
Well, okay. So let's parlay this into the next question here. So what do we think of this demon? Was it overpowered? Was it balanced? Does it need to get nerfed? Does it need to get buffed a little bit?
I don't think there's an update needed because I think the speed of it is very fair. Because we can run, we can drive, we can fly, as we said. It's kind of like those internet questions you see where it says, would you rather be infinitely rich and there's a snail that's constantly following you, and if it touches you, you die? Or would you just live a regular life? And I feel like it's pretty fair. It does seem to be very strong, and it's really just annoying that it's constantly following you. And I like that it, again, can't jump, can't run. It can even put a hand on you because Hugh/Jeff says, don't let it touch you. Because I thought if it just touched you like it was Vecna, you'd just instantly seize up and go into cardiac arrest and die, or your legs would freaking snap and you get mutilated in an instant. But it grabs Jay's hair on the beach and they have a chance to fight back. So I think it's pretty balanced.
Makes you wonder about the first girl in the movie. That demon just folded her up like a lawn chair because it wanted to.
Fucked her up.
Ooh. It doesn't just want to kill you. It wants to treat you like a pretzel.
And there's the thing. Does it take certain things personally? Does it remember things? Does it remember people and their personalities and give them serve them their demise catered to them? Is it personalized demise? Because homegirl on the beach gets pretzeled, as you said, but Greg gets fucked to death. He gets like sexed to death
by his mom.
Oh, so Emily, when that happened, she said, "Oh, that's so disgusting. Why would they do that?" And I said, "People love freaky stuff. They love the freak downs." She's like, "Do you like this?" And I was like, "Yeah, actually, I'm liking how fucked up this is. Sorry, I guess I'm a freak." But yeah, he gets dead by his mom having sex with him, which would, to be fair, would be someone's nightmare. So perfectly on brand for a horror movie. But for Greg, yeah, it seems like they're having sex and there's like some juice coming out of his wrists or hands or something. And then it shows Greg and it looks like he has the life sucked out of him because he's all gray. So girl got pretzeled. But Greg got Greg. So what's its deal? Why does it pick and choose what kind of death you get?
Well, why is it a pervert, James?
It's so perverted. It's so horny. That was my question. Nick, whenever we see this monster, 80% of the time it's naked. It's got a boob out. It has dicks out. Obviously, sex is very huge. With the monster's a big fan of sex. It's big pervin.
Yeah.
So what's up? What's up with them?
I think that's just the nature of the curse, right? The nature of the curse is passed by sex. And he's like, well, live by the sex, die by the sex. And that's what it's about. That's what it's about. But what happens when all the victims are done? It just finally rests peacefully? Or is it to say, like, I'm just going to go haunt somebody who's having sex?
Again, I'm bored. I'm going to take on a new venture. Going back to our made-up origin or our speculation of it, it could just start over. The first person to have premarital sex, that second, is haunted. And it could be all the way over in South Korea. And it's got to hop on a plane, fly coach, or swim across the ocean.
What if it learned to fly coach?
It learned to break windows.
Let's move on to the burning question in all of the listeners' minds. James, how would we beat this demon?
I think you brought up a great point. It's going to echo the final battle of the movie, actually. Which is, like we said, the pool scene. They try to electrocute it. First off, why didn't the electrocution work? Is that like a Mythbusters thing? And that's just not how it works. Also, the monster yeeted the TV, so it got unplugged. So now it's just an unplugged TV in the water. So there's also that.
I don't know why there's so many outlets near this pool. That seems wildly irresponsible.
18 outlets.
Of outlets by this pool. Second off, most modern day, like that was a thing back in the 70s. Most modern day electronics have some sort of fail-safe mechanism or some sort of miniature breaker in them that the second they short out, they'll stop conducting that electricity. Or it'll any electrical system, right? You'll know this if you have a plug in your house and you overload it and it sparks, it'll kick a breaker. So like modern day electricity is not meant to catch fire, which is why we have nearly not as many electrical fires as we had back in the day. But
for the big final battle, I want to give the movie some props that did not work. It seemed like a very adolescent, immature kid way to set up a trap and set up the final battle. They probably thought, oh, in the movies we see if you drop a lamp, a toaster in a bathtub, you're going to get electrocuted. We could get it like that. So I like that it didn't work because I felt like that would be a little bit too cheesy. And I also just don't know how you do kill this thing. It seems like physical harm has no effect on it. Going back to how we would do it, you brought up a great point. Entrapment. Jail cell.
Build the cell somewhere on your property so you could always be checking in on it. Where's it at? Or put it across the country and put a camera there. Because, if you're being haunted by it, can you see it via camera?
That's a good question.
Good question. So you put a little ring camera there so you could always check in on it. But, yeah, if it has the physical limitations that we saw in this movie, I think a steel trap.
But I feel like at a certain point, I think the point of it is that it is inevitable and it will catch up to you. So I feel like it will find a way somehow, some way. It takes on the form of people. So is it always a humanoid shaped thing, or can it be like the thing and slither through cracks?
So that was a question. Like, does it carry the same physical restrictions as the form it takes on? Does it have the physical limitations of a human being? Right? Like, can it jump 20 feet in the air out of a hole?
I mean, again, going back to when it pimp smacked Paul, that was pretty superhuman. So who's to say it could not jump up 30 feet?
But I think you'd have a lot of opportunities to trap it, because you could try something, and if it gets out, it's walking at you, and you're like, ah, shit. All right, get in the car, drive another 50 miles, set up another trap.
I think actually it is too inevitable where when push comes to shove, it's just going to find a way out. Just like when Paul smacked it with a chair, it was like, bitch, what the fuck you doing? So it smacked the shit out of him. He didn't even need to do that, because if the sole mission of this thing was to walk at its target, it would have been unfazed, unbothered, but it took it hella personally and smacked Paul up. So I do think you can try as much as you want, but the whole point of the monster, I believe, is inevitability, that it will catch up to you.
It could have just ignored all of the appliances and gone after Jay, but it decided to yeet the appliances at Jay, which was a personal move.
It's not dumb. It's not dumb. So I think it could find its way up.
All right, James. We mentioned it in the trailer. Let's talk about it real quick. The music in this movie. The
Awesome.
synthy goodness. 2014, but reminded me of some 1980s John Carpenter. Scores are the most important part of a horror movie. I remember reading an article years ago, and it's not a surprise to anybody, but if you watch a horror movie with the sound off, it has almost no effect. The score, the music, the buildup of that all, the ambiance of it is everything for a horror movie. So I want to know your thoughts on the music.
Sound is immensely important, especially when it comes to horror movies. And I'm glad you brought up the music. Like I said, reminded me of the Stranger Things, the 80s nostalgic throwback craze that we got sucked into in 2016. This is 2 years earlier. So it does add to the familiarity of the movie, because this movie's very modern, but it has a lot of throwback style to it. The houses are styled in 50s and 70s. The clothing, even sometimes, is pretty timeless. The shell phone. So the girl has the shell phone. The director said, I just wanted to make up my own smart device, because as soon as you put a smartphone in it, it dates it. And that's what I think when I watch Iron Man or whatever, when they got flip phones or like the first iPhone, I'm thinking,
or a BlackBerry, or
dated yourself. So I thought the shell phone was good. That was funny. But going to an interview that Film Independent did with David Robert Mitchell, they did talk about the music. So Rich Vreeland, aka Disasterpiece, who is the music producer of this movie, David Robert Mitchell, he was playing an indie video game called Fez. It's like a puzzle platformer, and he loved the music. So he actually ended up contacting Disasterpiece because he knew he wanted an electronic score and something, quote, very unique and bold. So he simply just sent Disasterpiece an email, sent him his first film, The Myth of the American Sleepover, and also the script for It Follows, and Disasterpiece was interested. And it was just a perfect mixture of, hey, I'm low level, you're low, not low level, but I'm little known, you're little known. I like your work in this indie game. I want to put it in my indie movie. And I thought it was the perfect choice, because it just gave us that familiarity of those 80s, 70s Halloween, Nightmare on Elm Street slasher movies. So it brings the audience to a familiar place, but it updates the horror genre. And I thought it was just a perfect decision. Loved it. Loved the music.
Yeah, I don't have much to add on that, my man. You sort of nailed it. It's perfectly done. Like you said, the movie does have those vibes. Even the film for 2014 is not very crisp, right? There's a lot of blurry shots, a lot of long shots with out of focus. So it has a lot of those old school elements, and then that synth really brings it all together.
Drives it home.
Yeah. And there's a lot of emptiness in this movie from the film perspective. There's only a thing that follows, and most of the movie it's not following. And so the music really fills in a lot of that space in a very fun way for the viewer. So
before we talk about the ending of this movie, wrap up plot talk, can't forget the nitpicks.
Nitpicks.
Nick, I got to bring up a nitpick I have. It's gun safety. It was twice characters were just popping off shots at invisible targets while Jay was trying to shoot a visible target to her and Greg was in the background. But Paul can't see this thing and fucking clips Yara.
Yeah.
I'm like, was he so focused in the zone that
he loves Jay so much that he panicked and took the shot? And never panic with a gun in your hand.
I know they're teenagers, young adults, and I like that they include a shooting the gun in the field as training to justify how they know how to use a gun.
And it's Detroit. We know from Four Brothers.
Fact.
Part of the rules of being from Detroit is you got to know how to shoot a gun. So
nice callback to our podcast. Let's wrap this up. Let's talk about the ending. So we leave on Jay. Well, Jay had sex with Paul because not out of survival, but out of love. And they're a thing now. They be coupling. On the ending shot, we see something with the same walking pace in the background, walking towards Paul and Jay. We did see Paul drive past some hookers in some sketch area of Detroit. So we're thinking, okay, he had sex and then he did a transaction of it and passed it on, hoping that the hookers are banging someone that next night and it could just spread and spread and spread. So do we think that thing at the end was the thing, or are we all just forever paranoid?
I think forever paranoid. I think that's the point of the movie.
So you don't think it was a thing in the background?
No, I don't. I don't. Okay. I think it's a forever paranoid. I think the whole point of the ending there was you have to live your life without fear of death coming after you. I think that if I had to say that there was a final message that we were trying to be sold there, it was that you can't be afraid of death. You have to confront it and live your life without fear of it, even though it could be creeping around every corner. So I think forever paranoid, but
is that what the monster represents? Does it just represent the inevitable, or does it represent paying for your sins for premarital sex? Or I think you had a note in here about what the director said, or
yeah, he was always very vague about it. He did mention the idea of the societal pressure of not being free, that love and sex are two of the most important ways we express ourselves. I'm not quite sure I agree with that. You shouldn't necessarily be conflating love and sex and sleeping around a bunch to make yourself feel better. I think that's probably not the right message to send, but I think what he was trying to say is there's things that society tells you are bad that you can't be afraid of the consequences of. Sometimes you have to follow your heart and do it. To his credit, he's never really given a full explanation of this movie. I think he enjoys all of the fan theories and everything else that comes with it. And he's holding his whole meaning close to the vest, which I appreciate someone who can create art and not have the narcissism to say, let me tell you what it's about. Just, yeah, that's what I did. And you guys can figure it out what you want it to mean to you.
Just like what Jonathan Nolan said to Christopher Nolan of Memento, he says, how dare you have a secret meaning of what it is? The beauty of it is what the audience walks away from it from. And yeah, I saw, speaking of fan theories, Yara in the hospital, when she was reading that book in the beginning off her shell phone, she was reading a book called The Idiot. She does say something along the lines, quoting the book at the end of, the wound is going to kill somebody, but the wound itself is not scary. The scary part is that death is certain. And they make it a point to include that in the movie. So I think that was kind of like a really big clue that I think the thing represents just that death is inevitable. And it might just honestly be the fear of dying, anxiety of dying, death anxiety. Another theory I saw was the murder of adolescence and into adulthood, because when you have sex and you're not a virgin anymore, quote unquote, you become an adult. And there's allusions to that because Hugh/Jeff, when they're playing the trading game, he says, oh, I would love to be that kid. Imagine how great it would be to have your whole life ahead of you. So I think the nice part about this movie is you can pick up things and read into things and have different interpretations of it, all while being entertained and scared and shit in your pants.
Yeah.
The future of this movie, when it ended on the credits, Emily said, my wife, she said, I knew they were going to end it like that. You have to end it like that. That's why I didn't like, I liked how the final battle wasn't we killed the monster, we're all good, happily ever after. She knew it was like, it was gonna come back open ended.
It
And
follows, bro.
I was left like, no, I want to know more. But I will know more because there is a sequel in development. Micah Monroe is going to be coming back. It's going to be written and directed by David Robert Mitchell. It's going to be called They Follow. And I might see this in theaters.
I don't know what the timeline is for this one, but if it's spooky season next year, I think we may have to.
Yeah, we'll see when it comes out. But that is going to do it for the plot talk and our talking points. I think we covered a lot. This movie is a movie where you watch it a second time, a third time, you're going to pick up more stuff, and that is awesome to me. So, Nick, to wrap up this puppy, we got to get into our mini pops. This is our mini awards. We're going to hand out some accolades. We're going to label some people some pieces of shit. We're going to talk about the best things of our selected categories. We're going to start out, Nick, here with the best weapon. What do you got?
Oh, I hate doing this for some of these movies, but I have to say it's the gun.
Let me just save you here, Nick. Best weapon, sex. Sex gets you killed. Get you killed in this movie. And the monster even uses sex to gray out Greg, making him Greg.
Greg. Sex is a weapon.
Sex is the weapon in this movie.
I like it.
Who do you got for the best fighter?
Well, I was going to say Jay because she does survive quite a few encounters. She gets away from this murderous demon, but dude, it might just be the demon. This thing is unkillable.
Speaking of, see, I got to bring out the real world. We're in the supernatural realm. It is the monster because it appears like it can't die, and it's very strong and will not be stopped. The question here, Nick, is if it was pitted in a 1v1, saying, hey, monster, you need to fight so-and-so. You need to fight Daredevil. Would it be I guess it would be as strong, but would it still have that mission of just targeting someone because that's its sole purpose? Or would it clutch up and say, I got a 1v1 this guy?
I mean, that has to be its weakness, right? Is that it's focused on one thing.
It's tunnel vision.
It's chasing Jay and Daredevil's chasing after it, but can he see it? Or can he sense it? Really?
Oh, that'd be good. Oh, I hope they get matched up. Okay. I like that.
Ooh. All right.
Best fighter. That's going to bring us over to our most valuable character. Nick, we landed on the same guy. It's Paul. Paul, baby.
A little bit of a simp. He's simping.
He do be hardcore
Jay, the
simping.
whole movie, but he's not a useless simp. He's ready to throw down and die for her.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Threw a chair at the thing, pop shots, headshot the thing in the water. I don't even know how difficult that is. Almost hit Jay, so that was sketch. But honestly, for me, it was when he drove past those hookers and he was going to bite the STD bullet, speaking of STDs, and bang a hooker to pass it along to make sure it's out of their lives. I thought, that's a real one right there. Did you see those two floozies on the corner? Oof. Big oofs.
Who's not okay with getting a hooker killed?
Just ask anyone who's played Grand Theft Auto, which is full of a lot of pieces of shit, which is going to bring us into our final award here. The biggest piece of shit. This one's going to be a little bit tricky, Nick. What do you think?
I have Hugh/Jeff. Hugh Jeff. He does chloroform. He doesn't even seduce her. He chloroforms her.
He chloroforms her to give her the information.
Just die like a man.
I'm going to throw one out here, Nick. What do we think of Greg? He never believed the crew. He didn't take the threat seriously. And he was horn dogging. He was Googling all those girls. So I think all he wanted to help because he wanted to get in Jay's pants. Hugh Jeff, in the beginning, I was like all in on this guy because he deliberately passed it on to nice little old Jay and doomed her and put her in a tough spot to pass it along, be a floozy, and go through this trauma or just get haunted all the time. So Hugh Jeff, I think, could be worthy of it, but I do want to throw Greg out there because he didn't believe it. He fucked it up, and he got his due diligence. He got his due deed at the end.
Yeah, I'm not going to sit here and say Greg wasn't a piece of shit, but do I blame a high school kid, a guy, for oogling the girls?
I'm a guy's guy.
Do I blame him for not believing that there's a demon chasing her because she had sex with somebody? I wouldn't, I don't know. That's a pretty fantastical thing to just believe at face value. Even if you're like, oh, but you're her friend, you should believe her. If my friend came up to me and told me that, I wouldn't. There's not a chance. So he has some plausible deniability. Hugh Jeff knew what was happening, knew he was giving it to her, gave her the whole chloroform treatment. Just die like a man or go bang a prostitute. Not this innocent teenage girl.
You're right. He actually totally had the choice to do that. So I think that
so many choices.
Yeah. If he knew what was going on, what was at stake, he should have just passed it on to someone who not quote unquote deserved it, but just someone who was not as deserving.
So are we good with Hugh/Jeff?
Greg was pretty. If I went to high school with him, I would not like him because of how he oogles and just treats women like pieces of meat.
Creepy. Not a good guy, but
not even that good looking.
No, it didn't intentionally pass on a sex demon.
Probably killed 3 people. All right, Nick, let's wrap this talking portion up with our sarcastic selling points. I'm going to go first. This is a perverted thing. Meaning John Carpenter's The Thing, but horny.
Yeah, it's horny. I just said there's a thing and it follows.
Final review. Fight.
All right, final review time. Let's get into what the other guys are saying, and then we'll get into what we think of this movie. Starting out with Rotten Tomatoes, the critics, 95% of the critics thought that this was a good movie. How about the fans?
That's pretty damn high. The fans, quite a bit lower, are coming in at a 66%.
Moving over to Metacritic, the critics, they're going to be a little bit more stern. They're going to be an 83, which is going to translate to an 8.3 on the candy corn scale, or off the popcorn scale for the month of October.
And the people over at Metacritic, very similar to Rotten Tomatoes, they came in at a 6.8.
And now it follows. It swallows. And it haunts your hollows. It's the sexually transmitted demon score from IMDb, a 6.8. Oh my gosh, did we have sex at the same time? Because we're on the same page, baby. Hope that made sense. Yikes, big yikes if that did not make sense. Nick, let's get into what we think about it. I'm going to hit you with a laughable logline, followed by my candy corn points and my final thoughts on this movie.
Let's hear it.
My laughable logline, my LL Hawaiian barbecue, is a horny monster follows its victims to fuck them to death. Nick, I'm going to hit this with a 8.6, 8.7. I'm going high. I'm having a good time. And I really enjoyed this movie. The simplicity, going back to formula. I think when we were talking about horror movies in the beginning here, we're talking about the tropes, the cheap tricks, the things that make people look down on horror movies. This movie did none of that. It felt so nostalgic and so familiar to audiences with the throwback wide shots, the long takes, the synthy music, the muted colors. I felt like it wanted to grasp the audience of why we fell in love with horror movies back in the 70s and 80s, but bring it into a modern frame. And Nick, I gotta say, this movie, I was scared to watch it. After watching it, as I was watching it, I felt like I wasn't as scared because I appreciated the rules being presented to me. I appreciated that they were followed through with, and I didn't feel like it was a cheat code, an unfair monster. Like we talked about, I thought the threat was very balanced, an interesting concept, a lot of things to read into, and we don't need that historical origin story, the animated intro prologue of back 500 years ago, a demon, blah, 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 blah. No, we just get presented the threat. It's surface level on the presentation, but there's so many layers you could dig in and read into. The final battle, like I said, I appreciate. It's not a resolution. It's not an end to the threat. We keep it open-ended. We keep the thinker going. This is a movie that had me thinking, acting very on point, very subdued, right amount of fear, right amount of vulnerability, felt very realistic, very real, got that indie feel to it. I never felt like anyone was putting on an act No one's screaming bloody murder hysterically. I'm not watching performances. I'm watching the appropriate acting for the movie. And Nick, what I love about horror movies, you said it about the score. It's everything. It's important. Totally agree. But what I love about horror movies is that it makes the cinematography significantly more important. When you're watching a cookie cutter action movie, a cookie cutter rom-com, placing the camera here, blocking the actor here, whatever, we're listening to the lines. Honestly, we can listen to a podcast and get the same effect. The blocking of where you're framing the doors, the actors, the close-ups where I'm having so much anxiety, the wide shots where I'm reading into where's the monster, what am I looking at, the long shots, it's so integral to the story and how the audience experiences fear. And this movie, I think, did it perfectly. Wide shots, we're scanning the background, trying to get a jump on the monster. Like, you're not going to get me. I'm going to spot you before you show up. Close-ups, tight shots, hate them. Anxiety-ridden. The editing, when we wake up in a new space and we don't know where we are, we have no frame of reference of where the monster is. Hate it. The editing is going to control our comfort level. So I think all of the aspects of filmmaking, they are 100% necessary when it comes to horror movies. I think when we saw this movie in 2014 as a society, all of us just kind of looked at each other and said, yo, horror genre, we are so back. It's 2014. Bring on the Jordan Peels. Bring on the thinkers. Let's go. 8.7 from me. What do you got, Nick?
Very nice breakdown, my friend. Well, my laughable logline, pretty simple, is a demon doesn't like when you have sex. And for me, this is a 7.8. Might be the farthest apart we've been this season, but not too far apart. I think we have a lot of the same takes here. It was done really well. Like you said, David Robert Mitchell did have a vision for this. It was done well. I mean, there were little things. The first time we see Jay, we're in a pool. It ends in a pool. There's a lot of symbolism throughout the movie. A lot of characters starting in one place and then ending in another place, but in a completely different situation. So you could tell he did care about it. It was well thought out. Like he said, with horror movies, you can't just jump into it and create a scary concept and see where it ends up. There does have to be a script, a beginning, middle, end, all of that stuff. A few knocks from me were there were times when the movie dragged a little bit, not terribly, but a little bit. Some of those long shots, we went over this last spooky season with Signs, where sometimes time spent on a shot does not always equal suspense. That's for me. That's a personal thought for myself. So we did have some of that, but this really was more of a suspense thriller than horror, I'd say, which I think is good. It didn't quite try and scare you. It really tried to have a constant heart rate going, which is very similar to how the characters would feel being constantly followed by something. So as far as putting the audience into the character's shoes, which I think is what makes a horror movie or thriller or suspense movie much more powerful, is very important. And he did that. He was able to do that for us. We really kind of felt the terror of, where is this monster? Is it walking up behind us? Is it in the crowd right now? You know, whenever there was a scene with a crowd, I'm looking at which one of them is the monster. I
didn't trust anybody that walked into the frame after that was established of what the threat was. When he breaks into the house and then Paul says, "I'll go check it out," and then he walks back in the room, you're like holding your breath, and then he speaks and you're like, okay, it's just Paul.
There's a moment when Hugh Jeff, he's explaining the monster and this girl's walking up and he's freaking out. And he's like, "Do you see her? Do you see her?" And they go, "Yeah." He's like, "Okay." You realize you kind of get in the mind of these people saying, "Oh yeah, this would be constant terror, constantly freaking out, every noise, everything."
Awful.
So he did a great job of that. The actors got a little monotone and weird. The acting was a little weird. I mean, they're younger, unknown actors, so I can't knock them too much. It's not like it's a bad performance from a highly paid actor, but there were moments where they were just sitting around. "Hey, yeah, how you doing?" "I'm okay." Some of those scenes that went back and forth, and maybe that's supposed to be part of the awkward high schooler experience. But as a viewer, those were the few knocks. And As far as a movie of this genre goes, highly recommend. I think a 7.9 from me for a horror suspense thriller movie is, if you don't know my scale by now, it's pretty darn good. So
wait, did you say 7.9? What'd you say?
7.8?
Sorry,
7.8.
Okay.
Yeah, I said 7.9 there, but I did say 7.8.
You can knock it up to 7.9. I won't be
sticking
mad.
at a 7.8.
I thought this movie was really good.
And that puts it, compared to last year, that puts it right in between The Thing and Scream, which I think it deserves to be right there in the middle of those two movies that we also enjoyed.
So, Nick, as a person who's quote unquote not a horror guy, would you recommend this movie? And would you think this is a good horror movie to get people into horror?
I would. I would put the corn dog stamp of approval on this one. It would say, if you haven't seen it, go check it out.
Candy Corn Dog. I thought this was going to be an ultra scary movie. I'm glad it was not filled with jump scares. I wouldn't describe this as a scary movie. I would describe it as a creepy movie. Actually, probably a freaky movie. Because that monster's down to freak. It's a freaky ass monster. It's trying to freak, man.
It do be freaky, though.
It be freaking, it be following. And if it can follow, then you can at least have the decency to follow us. Let's see what I did there. On YouTube and Instagram
segue.
at Just Play It Podcast. You can follow us on X at Just Play It Pod, because we out here, we do be banging out episodes, and hopefully that's going to make you follow us just like it. So we appreciate you. Please tune in next week. We're keeping the spooky train rolling. Nick, I'm just going to drop 2 words from my hint for next week's movie. It's going to be Intergalactic Circus. What do you got?
I think that's great. I was going to say, you might think next week won't be scary. You might think it's fun, but there's some bad intentions going on next week. So,
oh, okay. Well, we can only see what we can encounter of the circus kind next week when we get there. But until then, we're going to be heading gone. And remember, if you're thinking about having sex, think again, because you could just get murdered. Wear a condom. Would that count?
I'm your worst nightmare.
Oh shit, the girl I banged is dead, and I'm next.
it doesn't just want to kill you. It wants to treat you like a pretzel.